announcement last night that might help explain Bitcoin's flash crash to 66K overnight. Everyone's being distracted and blaming Michael Saylor for the crash, but I think the U.S. Treasury's newest escalation in the Middle East could be the bigger factor that influences where Bitcoin goes next. So here's what Scott Bessent tweeted last night. Let me pull that up. And of course, we got our boy, Kent Haliburton, CEO and co-founder of SAZ Mining with us today. And of course, Nico's over here too. We got a full house today, guys. All right. So let me zoom in here and I will start with just reading a little bit of this, and then I'm going to go into the official press release. So Scott Bessent tweeted, while Iran's economy is in free fall, the regime has chosen to co-opt digital asset technologies for its own corrupt agenda, including evading sanctions and transferring wealth out of the country. So before I go further, I think one of the biggest revelations that we have found out since this second operation in the Middle East is the role that Bitcoin has played, not only in Iran, as the example, but in general as a geopolitically neutral money. I think that is probably the biggest takeaway that I have found from this whole thing that we've seen is that it has entered Bitcoin into the mainstream conversation here, for better or worse, okay? Obviously, Trump came out and said, hey, we are pro-Bitcoin. We're going to be the Bitcoin capital of the world. And then we go into the Middle East. We go into Iran. We start this operation war, however you want to frame it, however they're framing it now. And we find out essentially the big news, which we've actually have heard rumors for a while, that Iran has been one of the biggest, not only sovereign holders of Bitcoin, but biggest Bitcoin miners. And of course, the most recent press release we saw is that Iran has basically used, I believe the number was $90 billion dark network is how they were framing it. So Bitcoin has made a very serious foothold into the geopolitical macro conversation. So let's get into this press release here, and this is where it does get a little interesting. So Scott Bessent is quote tweeting this tweet from the Treasury Department saying, today, Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control designated, I think it's NOBITEX. I think that's how you say it. Maybe it's NOBITEX, but I think it's NOBITEX. Iran's largest digital asset exchange, along with 3 other Iranian digital asset exchanges, as part of economic fury and the Trump administration's effort to eliminate the threat posed by the Iranian regime. So going over to the press release, here's the press release. Again, economic fury targets Iran's largest digital assets exchange for terror finance and sanctions evasion, which we've been covering on this show for a long time. That's one of the biggest conversations we have here, is that Bitcoin, by its very nature, will force governments to essentially readjust their view on, or rather how they view sanctions working in the modern digital world. But anyways, going further, today, the U.S. Department of OFAC designated, again, I think it's NOBITEX, NOBITEX, Iran's largest digital asset exchange, along with 3 other Iranian digital asset exchange as part of economic fury and the Trump administration's effort to eliminate the threat posed by the Iranian regime. Now, they're quote tweeting the Scott Bessent tweet, so I won't read the first part, but I'll read the rest of the quote, and it goes, Iran's current economic chaos is proof that President Trump's maximum pressure campaign has been a success. As promised, Treasury will continue to follow the money in support of economic fury, whether it is through the banking system or through digital assets, to prevent the regime from developing a nuclear weapon. NOBITEX has provided significant support to the regime, processing more than 50% of all Iranian digital asset inflows in 2025 and facilitating payments tied to Iran's terrorist activities, sanctions evasion efforts, and the IRGC-linked transactions, including activity associated with the IRGC's affiliated ransomware actors. NOBITEX also helped the Central Bank of Iran access hundreds of millions of dollars in stable coins used to prop up the plummeting value of the Iranian rial, while enabling regime insiders to access international digital asset exchange and evade sanctions across multiple jurisdictions. Now, I want you to keep in mind that last part of that sentence, which is enabling regime insiders to access international digital asset exchange and evade sanctions across multiple jurisdictions. That is where my head is going to go later on in the show, but reading more of this press release, following the commencement Of U.S. combat operations in Iran. Okay, so it's U.S. combat operations now. It's no longer a war. It's a combat operations. Nobitex played a role in protecting and moving assets and funds out of Iran to shield regime wealth despite internet blackouts. OFAC, of course, today also designated Amir Hossein Rad, Nobitex's chairman, co-founder, and former CEO, as well as numerous other Nobitex leaders and officials. Anyways, going further, just reading a little bit, of course, they go on to explain what this economic fury is doing, what the point of it is, and it's something we've been covering on the show for a little while here, which is part of what we are seeing happen in the Middle East is not just a kinetic confrontation between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, but what we are also seeing is this economic fury or economic epic fury play out, which is, again, a war on the finances here. So it is a two-front war coming from the U.S., which is, one, we are obviously in a kinetic confrontation. Again, literally missiles and seemingly maybe potentially boots on the ground, but also attacking where the money is coming from. Hence why we always say on the show, and it's one of the common tropes of Bitcoiners, is if you follow the money, then you can see how things are actually playing out. Now, the U.S. Treasury, I think, is taking a little bit further. It's not just following the money, but attack the money. Make sure you can stop their money flowing to them so that they can stop funding all of the stuff that they're doing. Or put another way, if you cut off their money, then the bad guys can't do the bad guy things. Anyways, there is a little more in here, which is pretty interesting here. So again, it goes into what Nobitex has done, which I basically just said. But, excuse me. You can see in this press release that this whole idea is basically based on the premise that the Iranian regime has been using Bitcoin, or as they like to frame it, digital assets, to not only store value, not only build a dark network as they've been framing it, but obviously be able to get money out of the country, or rather, put it another way, for them to get fiat and be able to transact with various different countries. And this is where I start getting maybe, again, a little tinfoil hat. But I think what, again, I've been saying here that I find to be the most interesting is, one, that Bitcoin has obviously become a central role in how the IRGC is not only funding their military operation in Iran, but also that this is how they are transacting. This is how they're storing their wealth. Now, the interesting part, again, is that idea that I brought up at the very beginning of this show, is that throughout this whole process, throughout the whole war in the Middle East since February, it's what's that now? 4 months, 3 months, 3 months, 3-ish, 4 months. I don't know. Math's hard. Anyways, we found out that they are, in fact, one of the biggest sovereign holders of Bitcoin. Now, from a very simple elementary view of this, you would probably argue, or at least have the opinion, well, like, hey, look, the U.S. Treasury just cut off the IRGC from these exchanges, so it's kind of a forced hodl. Now, I think you could make the case for that, but I think the case that I'm going to be making is, again, one, we know for a fact that Iran, if the numbers that we have been getting, if the rumors and speculations are true, Iran would essentially be, I believe, like the third largest sovereign holder of Bitcoin, or the third largest government holding Bitcoin. And then, of course, now in the face of these sanctions of the largest, or rather, I guess the 4 largest exchanges in Iran, I think what might be happening is, it seems to me at least, that the Iranian regime, the IRGC, is most likely in a position right now where they have to liquidate a lot of holdings. And if this is what we will find out later, that in fact they did have a huge Bitcoin holding because of this war, and the fact that they're funding this whole operation through Bitcoin, or quote, digital assets, whether it's stable coins and Bitcoin, that their stack is most likely getting smaller. And if that is the case, and further, we just know for a fact that the largest Iranian exchange is being sanctioned, you could probably make the case that they are now trying to flee that exchange, go into other exchanges. And hence, this is probably why we saw so many longs liquidated in the last few days. particularly yesterday, but that we are seeing sells happen. Now, whether that's them selling Bitcoin from the exchange to go take that capital somewhere else, or whether that's them just completely getting out of Bitcoin so that they can get in cash, whether that's, Chinese yuan or whatever other fiat currency of their choices, I think we might have found a smoking gun here with this announcement. And again, it just further shows you that Bitcoin has become an integral part in the macroeconomic geopolitical situation. If you are in the position that Iran is in, one, you understand you need to use Bitcoin. Two, you understand that at a certain point, you can't have your Bitcoin on these exchanges, which is what we always tell you guys. Never leave your Bitcoin on an exchange because, one, it's really not your Bitcoin. And two, the exchanges can pretty much cut you off from that Bitcoin. So when I read this, I'm starting to think that maybe a lot of the longs liquidated, a lot of the selling and inflows and trading volume that we saw might be coming from the IRGC being forced to liquidate a lot of their Bitcoin holdings. I could only venture to guess that, yes, they maybe had one of the rather third largest sovereign Bitcoin holdings in the world. But since this whole war operation confrontation with the U.S. has started, that their bags are getting lighter. I'm guessing their stacks are getting smaller and smaller because they need to continue to fund this war effort. And so, do we know for a fact yet that this is the case? No, not really. But I think the elementary view of Iran or the IRGC being in a forced hodl situation here, I don't think that that's the case. I think that's a very elementary view of what's going on. I think since their largest exchange, since the, as it said, 50% of Iranian digital asset quote transactions were going through this single exchange, I think they're in a position right now where they have to liquidate more of their holdings. And if you're looking at what's going on in the on-chain data, it's very hard to kind of wrap your head around the idea of who is actually selling Bitcoin. And that's why my head's going to, it's probably, this might be where we're seeing a lot of the selling happening. Whoa, that was weird. The OG selling that we've been covering on chain has started to exhaust. There's not that much coin coming from pure Bitcoin holders, people that have been holding Bitcoin for a long time. So you got to look at where is all of this selling come from. And to me, I think this might be the smoking gun here, but what do I know? Maybe I'm having my tinfoil hat on here. So Nico's giving me the crazy look. What's your thoughts on this? Nico, am I reaching? Do you think there's some validity to my speculation here? Maybe start with just the sanction or rather the shutting down of NoBTX in general before we get into the speculation of this story.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of the core message of what we've been talking about the last couple of days, right? There's a fundamental divide between how these two systems work, right? Bitcoin in self-custody allows you to transact peer-to-peer, right? And governments have been used to operating in this environment, whether it's the European Union or the United States, where essentially they politicize the financial system. And what they do is, if at any country that the European Union or the United States is not friendly with, what they do is we saw this with Russia, right, in the beginning of the Ukraine conflict, and now we're seeing this in Iran. What they do is that they weaponize the financial system, they politicize the financial system to essentially freeze the accounts of their adversaries, right? And the thing that happens when that happens is it forces their adversaries to seek alternatives. And this is why Iran said, hey, we're going to accept Bitcoin as a toll for the Strait of Hormuz. Why are they saying that? Because they're saying that because they know that the United States government, if that Bitcoin, clearly they didn't, not all of it, the United States government can't freeze it. They can't sanction it. They can't, stop it, right? So that's a little bit of a conflictive issue, to say the least, because could you imagine the United States government being put in a position where the world realizes that, the strength of the United States with its aircraft carriers, with its huge government, it's the wealthiest country in the United States, it can't freeze the assets of another country if it wants to, right? That's a paradigm shift. That really changes things tremendously. There we go.
I don't know. It's acting up on me.
So it's a paradigm shift, like completely, right? So what they're doing, in my opinion, is it's an optics game. It's basically signaling to the world, listen, we could still sanction your country despite, you using digital assets. And I think that's the message that Scott Bessent is trying to transmit to the world. And I think it's a two-pronged thing, right? First of all, it's the optics, right? Telling the world, listen, the United States could still freeze your assets. It doesn't matter if it's in Bitcoin. Number one. Number two, the Trump administration is still ultimately trying to get the Clarity Act across the finish line. And one of the talking points that Senator Elizabeth Warren used at the Senate Banking Committee was, look, Iran is using Bitcoin to, take tolls, right? So like, I think Scott Bessent did two things with saying that, which is basically saying, listen, we still can freeze money if we want to. And it's signaling to the opposing political party saying, listen, Elizabeth Warren, you're crazy. We could still, our sanctions are still effective. Right. But I think as time progresses, it's a one-way door, because if you're like Russia or if you're Iran, Russia the other day announced that they are basically booting MasterCard and Visa out of the country. Right. And they're doing that on purpose because they don't want the United States and the European Union to have leverage over them. Right. So they're building an alternative system. And one of those alternative systems is Bitcoin. Like one of the things that Jeff Booth has always said that's always stuck with me is one of the things about Bitcoin is that you're going to have to be okay with even your worst enemy using Bitcoin and benefiting from Bitcoin themselves, right? So it's very interesting. Now, I do want to pull this up because it does relate to this conversation, and we do have a mining expert on the show today. I do want to pull up the global hash rate map, right? And if you look at the United States, it holds the majority of the hash rate. We can get into discussions about that. Like I would feel uncomfortable if it got closer to that 50% number, but if you look at the United States, quote unquote, adversaries, right? If you look at Russia, has 16% of the hash rate. If you look at China, despite the mining ban, still has 11% of the hash rate. If you look at Iran, despite all the bombs that were dropped, it still almost has 1% of the hash rate. And where do you think the Bitcoin that's being mined in those countries is going to? It's going to their governments mostly. I would make that argument. I would make the argument that if you're running a large mining operation in Russia and the government is not aware of it, they're going to take it and they're going to mine themselves. They're definitely taking a cut of these mining operations. And the same thing applies to China, by the way, right? You can't convince me that despite the China mining ban, that there's not large mining operations in China. And if there is large mining operations in China, they're in cahoots with the government so that those mining operations don't get shut down, right? But the thing that I wanted to bring up is specifically Iran. Iran has 9 exahashes, almost 1% of the global Bitcoin hash rate.
And they also had more.
They had more before.
It was like double that.
They had more before the war, right? But the point I'm trying to make is this goes back to Max Kaiser's thesis, which is he calls it the global hash war, right? Which is exactly what's playing out. And you have these countries that have these geopolitical, differences. And regardless of those geopolitical differences, Bitcoin's incentives are still there. And Bitcoin's incentives are incentivizing people in those countries to mine Bitcoin to enrich themselves. And by doing that, they're actually making the Bitcoin network stronger. The higher the hash rate, the higher technically you make the argument that the Bitcoin network is more computationally secure, which means the value proposition goes up, right? And again, these countries are just competing, right? Which is, again, good for the Bitcoin network. It's good for the decentralization of Bitcoin. But I think the tough pill to swallow that I think it's going to happen in the next 10 years or so is the realization of the world that, hey, it doesn't matter if the United States is the Bitcoin capital of the world. Russia is still going to use Bitcoin. China is still going to use Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, there's really nothing the United States government can do other than perhaps maybe bomb the country to stop those countries from mining Bitcoin and transacting in Bitcoin peer to peer. I think that's going to be the tough pill to swallow. And I think that realization is really going to happen over the next decade or so. Like, it doesn't matter how much you like, you know, and this goes back to something that I was saying like a couple of weeks ago. Like, the thing that governments believe is that they're going to be able to regulate Bitcoin. And the tough pill to swallow, and it was G Money that actually said the exact same thing when he came on the show when we did that Rumble exclusive. The tough pill to swallow is that it's actually going to be Bitcoin that's going to regulate governments over time, because it's essentially an immovable object. Like, the rules don't change. Your censorship rules aren't going to be applied to the protocol, aren't going to be applied to the network. You just kind of have to live with it. You have to go along with it, right? So anyways, I'm going to stop my rant. I want to get Kent's take on this. Kent, you're a miner. You have mining operations in many countries. What's your take on my thesis on, it's not my thesis, it's Max Kaiser's thesis about the global hash war and about how different countries are going to continue mining Bitcoin despite their political differences?
Well, I think it's 100% accurate. I'm going to give you it from a different take, right? If at the end of the day, the US is going to come along and say, cool, we're going to seize your digital assets, which I'm going to leave that aside for a minute because I don't know what that actually means. And I think there's a lot of nuance that could be being obfuscated there. But come back to that in a minute. If you think about it, if you want to be able to send value outside your borders, Bitcoin is really the only reliable way that you can do that without another government censoring you. So how can you do that? Well, you have to produce your own blocks. That's the only way to ensure that you truly can. And if you want to back into some numbers, I did this while you were talking. It's pretty ironic that they have 0.8% of the Bitcoin network right now being secured in Iran, assuming that data is true, and I have no reason to think it's not. Right now, there are 144 blocks produced each day. If you wanted to produce one block, you need 0.7% of the hash rate in the network. And that means that you could produce a block in Iran every day, send it out, and send value to whomever else is on the ledger, right? If you've got 0.7%, they have 0.8%, right? So they can right now, in an uncensorable way, continue to send their Bitcoin to any of their other allies and trade that for goods and services. Now, I want to come back to the digital asset thing because I think, Opti, you're onto something directionally, in my opinion. Like, there's smoke there for sure. The fire, though, I'm not sure where it is. And the reason for that is because I think when it comes to digital assets, I don't believe that they seized any Bitcoin unless they did it through the exchange itself. And figuring out how to crack the exchange and somehow get the private keys to Bitcoin. I just don't believe that they're seizing Bitcoin. And I think they're intentionally saying digital assets to kind of rub Bitcoin or roll Bitcoin in the mud with the fact that they can seize stable coins. So I think they're trying to conflate those two intentionally to project power, as you were saying, Nico. So they want to project that they have the capability to do this. But, you know, I think to draw an analogy, in the popular media right now, I think everybody's seen that drone warfare is this asymmetric situation that's like countervailing like traditional industrial warfare. And everybody's racing to get drones and saying, cool, we can protect ourselves from missiles and stuff by having drone warfare. And that's largely stopped Russia and Ukraine and all these other things, right? It stopped the Strait of Hormuz. So in the exact same way that that's going on in the analog reality, in digital reality, Bitcoin's the same, right? It's asymmetric. Me as a single individual, I can project my power because you have to extract the secret key or my private seed phrase to be able to move my Bitcoin. And that goes the same for every individual, whether they're an entity or an individual. So it means, can the US government just force their way into stealing Iranian Bitcoin? No, I don't think they can. And going a step further to correlate this, like the timing is sus for sure, but did they really sell their Bitcoin, or did something else happen there, right? Like, first of all, what are they paying their soldiers for? At the end of the day, if you're going to fund a war, it's when the military and the soldiers stop getting paid that really the war changes, right? And so as long as Iran is continuing to fund their military, they're going to keep fighting in this conflict. And what are they being paid? I don't know. Is it the local currency? Is it Bitcoin that they're taking? I just don't know. But I could see another counter case where the U.S. somehow seized all the digital assets from Navi Techs and took that and then said, cool, we're going to go sell the Bitcoin and we're going to dump the price so that we can correlate to the fact that we've seized digital assets, including Bitcoin. Well, they haven't really. They've just managed to, put a gun to the head of the exchange operator and have them send all their Bitcoin to the US, right? That's the only way that could conceivably happen. So I think that there's a ton of open questions. There's more that needs to be uncovered. But at the end of the day, using digital assets as a narrative continues to allow the U.S. to project power on their ability to force financial censorship with other countries. And at the same time, Iran continues to mine there and project their power because they can produce a block a day with their current hash rate and transfer value to anybody anywhere in the world. And if you see blocks show up in mempool, I picked this up from listening to Bob Burnett recently. Every once in a while, you'll see a block that says unknown. You don't have to label who produced the block in the mempool. And I would argue that those unknown blocks are probably government actors that aren't looking to follow necessarily all the rules of the network and care about broadcasting that, hey, this was Iran that mined this block, but they're probably producing blocks, throwing them on there and wanting to be discreet and say, hey, it wasn't us. So nobody knows it's them transferring value.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And also too, like what stands out to me the most is how resilient Bitcoin has been to how resilient Bitcoin has been to narratives, to the censorship, to the shutdowns. Like, I mean, like, especially before the Trump administration, like the media, like they threw everything humanly possible at this thing and it didn't stop. And the reason for that is the incentive that it creates. And while Kent was talking, I was just looking at this map. One of the things that stuck out to me the most was Iran has 0.84% of the hash rate, according to this website. But if you look at North Korea, which is like the boogeyman, they have 2.5 exahashes. Like that's pretty crazy. Like, this is a country that the United States, they went to war, right? That the whole Korean War, that's why there's South Korea and North Korea. They got split in the middle. They reached an agreement, right? But North Korea, right, which the United States heavily sanctions, right? They have a nuclear weapon, right? It's like the ultimate boogeyman. They still have 2.5 exahashes, which can't, like, that's not small, right? So like the point I'm trying to make is, like, all these countries following their own incentives is actually making the Bitcoin network stronger, despite all the political rhetoric and despite all the media attacks, which again have quieted down since the election of the Trump administration. But even if we have the next administration that perhaps could be more hostile, Bitcoin's going to keep chugging along. And as we saw with the China mining ban that happened in 2021, what happened to that hash rate? The hash rate dropped by 50%, and all it did was relocate to the United States. And it wasn't because there was a CEO or a politician saying, all right, guys, we got to keep the Bitcoin mining network alive. No, it was literally, oh my God, we can make 50% more Bitcoin because 50% of our competition literally just went off air. And that's literally why all those miners migrated to the United States. It wasn't a central authority directing them to do so. It was Bitcoin's incentives, right? And ultimately, I think Bitcoin wins at the end of the day. And I say this so many times, and I'm going to continue to iterate it as people are a little bit depressed because the price of Bitcoin is going down. Bitcoin has co-opted humanity to ensure its survival with greed. That's all it comes down to. It's like, listen, you do good by me, you make sure I stay alive, and I make sure you're getting those precious Satoshis and you're benefiting from number go up technology, right? So this is fascinating to me. North Korea 2.5 exahashes. I mean, and again, to go to your point, Kent, like I'm pretty sure that North Korea isn't using Foundry or Antpool. Maybe they're using Antpool because, you know, the connections with the Chinese government. But like, you know, it's fascinating to see this play out in real life, and it's fascinating to me that even with the power of the United States, the might of the United States, despite that, you see it. It's there. It's for the world to see. People are going to continue mining Bitcoin, and I think that signifies the resilience of the network.
Fully agree with you, man. If you look at it, yeah, you just pulling up the North Korean numbers, they're still able to produce a block every 3 days, right?
That's crazy.
So
Wow.
despite the US and all its force, it cannot stop Iran from producing a block every day and North Korea from creating a block every 3 days to send it to whomever they want, wherever in the world they want to send that value. And I think as that continues, that these ideas continue to percolate, it's no different than, like, you know, the latest technology that gets spun out there typically gets adopted by the black market sectors, or let's call them the gray market sectors, right? Like the porn area of the interwebs, the drug area of the interwebs. You know, I think we're just seeing that on a nation state scale here with Bitcoin. I don't like that we are being associated with not actors that I love to be associated with. However, it is people that are pushed into a corner, right? That are using the technology that enables them to continue to function and exist. And so by necessity, these actors are picking up these tools and using them. So when you look at how Bitcoin is playing out adoption wise, this is actually a lot more how I would have thought it was going to be adopted, was by, you know, enemies really, and smaller nation states that are trying to kind of combat the dollar-based influence, not by national strategic reserves or the micro strategies of the world, but just out of necessity, like all tooling typically is. So, you know, when we watch this whole thing play out, I think that although there's a lot of pain right now from the price standpoint, and people are asking, hey, is it profitable to still continue to mine? The uncensorable nature of Bitcoin and the fact that you can have a decentralized money printer and transfer value by mining is going to keep people mining. And that will set the floor for the value for mining, because that use case isn't going to go anywhere. It will continue to be there because there's always going to be somebody trying to stop somebody else from sending value. And that will mean that there's always a bid for Bitcoin to be able to send uncensorable value.
I 100% agree with that. And the one of the points that you were making, Ken, I want to add to that, right, is the beauty of this is, like, the more they push, right, like the more they try to censor, the bigger the incentive is for the people that they're trying to censor to seek an alternative. And the beauty of that is that while they seek the alternative, they look at Bitcoin, and actually it incentivizes them even more to adopt Bitcoin, incentivizes them even more to mine Bitcoin, right? So it's like, it's this beautiful thing, right? It's like the more they push, the more they try to clamp down, it actually makes the Bitcoin network stronger. And I think it's Kaiser that actually said that, right? Like Bitcoin is meant to be attacked. The more Bitcoin gets attacked, the stronger the network becomes, right? And I think right now, I wouldn't call it an attack, but I would say that this specific cycle, what we're seeing is the kind of financialization of Bitcoin, like Bitcoin being integrated into Wall Street. And I think Wall Street, as governments, believe that they can co-opt it. And I think what we're learning in this specific cycle, I've been telling you guys this, since October of last year, I don't think the 4-year cycle is dead. Like Wall Street is experiencing the same thing that the rest of us have experienced if you've been in the industry for a long time, right? Which is like, you're going to have to pay your dues. You're going to have to, take it on the chin. You're going to have to go through the pain of the ebbs and flows of Bitcoin. You're going to have to go through the volatility that comes with Bitcoin. That's just the reality of it. It doesn't matter whether you're a massive institution like MicroStrategy. It doesn't matter whether you're a nation state. It doesn't matter. It's rules without rulers. You're equal to everybody else in the network. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're Michael Saylor. It doesn't matter whether you're president of the United States. It doesn't matter if you're a pleb that's holding 0.1 Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. You are equal in the eyes of the Bitcoin network, and you have the power, just like them, to be able to receive transactions, to be able to send transactions, and to be able to mine it. This is the beauty of Bitcoin. And to go back to what Kent was saying, I don't think they want people to know that, because that really fundamentally changes the balance of power between the nation state and the individual. And I think that's ultimately what we're going through right now. Like, this is the whole thesis of the book, The Sovereign Individual. They talked about this. They wrote this book in the 90s. And the thesis was that information technologies was going to fundamentally free the individual. And it was going to free the individual through information. And we're seeing that with the rise of social media. No longer are people relying on a handful of outlets to get their information. But you're also seeing this with money, right? And that's the really, really exciting part. And I think we're just in the early innings of the true separation of money and state. I think we're just beginning that. I think we lived through the separation of information and state. I think we went through the most bumpy part, but now we're in the early innings, and I think they can't go back. I think that once Elon acquired X, once alternative platforms like Rumble started to become popular, once protocols like Nostr were launched, you can't put that cat back. What's the expression? Can't put the cat back in the
bag, right?
In the bag or something. I don't know what the expression. I don't know where that even came from.
I don't think it's cat in the hat
or whatever. Cat in the Hat. That's a good book though.
Yeah, that's literally that's above your reading level.
So you can't reverse that. It's a one-way door. So like, if you look at, and I've said this on social media many times, like, if you consume your information from legacy media versus consuming your information from new media, you live in alternative realities, right? And I think what we discovered specifically around the pandemic was that they were using their control on media in order to sell the public on certain narratives, right? And you could see the disconnect, because on new media, you had people like Joe Rogan just having open conversations. And then you saw legacy media try to tarnish his name, like trying to change the image of him. Like, oh, Joe Rogan is taking horse dewormer and like stuff like that. Like, it was so dishonest, right? And I think we're going to go through a very similar phenomenon with money. And the thing with money is that that's all the marbles, right? Like, that's their source of power. That's their source of, that's how they fund themselves, right? That's how ultimately they control people, right? This is why they're so hell-bent on really launching and rolling out this central bank digital currency. So it's just really exciting to watch this like transformation in human history, this pivotal moment in history. And I think it's going to get bumpier. I think it's going to get bumpier. I think it's going to get way bumpier before it starts to smooth out, as more and more people decide to opt out of the traditional financial system out of necessity. And of course, what is the best alternative? The best alternative is Bitcoin. You see a lot of people adopting stable coins, a lot of them. And I'm super happy that, as a first generation American, my parents came from Venezuela. I'm super happy that Venezuelans are able to access dollars, because they were living in a country of hyperinflation. The fact that they're able to access digital dollars and they're able to survive and they're able to receive payments is fantastic. But eventually, Venezuelans are going to come to the realization that we've come to in the States that is already dollarized. We're going to be like, wait a second, there's still inflation. Prices are still rising 10%. And then what's the inevitable outcome? Where all roads lead to Bitcoin. That's just a one-way door, right? I just think, Kent, one last bit before I shut up, because I've been ranting for a while, is I think that we miscalculated as a community how fast this was going to be. What I've realized is that this is going to be a multi-generational thing. I think this is going to take decades, because people have to essentially, the people that were alive when Bitcoin was discovered, they have to unlearn a lot of things. And then the people that were born after Bitcoin existed, they're going to be Bitcoin native, which is so exciting. Like, the fact my daughters are going to be born into a world where Bitcoin already exists. So I know for a fact they're going to be like, you mean I have to go into a branch and spend an hour and a half and they have to ask me all these crazy probing questions? Like, or I could just download a wallet. Like, you know, like it's very clear where this is going. Ken, am I seeing things, or what's your take?
I think you and I are singing from the same hymnal until at the very end. And the only distinction that I've got is I don't know that it takes decades. You could be right. I think what I've learned in my decade in Bitcoin is that I am a bad predictor of the future. And I appreciate that people do try, but I could have never guessed when I got into Bitcoin that we'd be talking about national strategic reserve 10 years later, right? To me, that seemed unfathomable. Bitcoin was sub $1,000. Now, I'm glad we're there. Also didn't predict somebody like Michael Saylor would show up and have like a single-handed like influence on the entire ecosystem through his 800,000 plus Bitcoin that he's purchased and now is selling a little bit and changing his tune on. So, you know, the way this is unfolding is very hard to predict. So do I know it's going to take decades for us to get there? No. Can I see it taking decades? Yes. Can I see it also happening very quickly because a group of incorrigible people that we call Bitcoiners just refuse to do anything else but focus on Bitcoin and meme it into existence? We could reach a tipping point just based on that, and enough pain, right? I think the whole thing now is if you look at the people that are adopting Bitcoin, they're in large numbers. Like if you look from a Myers-Briggs personality assessment, they're like INTPs, INTJs, and these are people that sort of put truth over social acceptance largely.
Oh,
and
that's fascinating.
These are people that are willing to kind of, you know, go up against others and be wrong and don't really care because that's what they think is right. And so I think that we've gotten that cohort into Bitcoin at this point. And now I think we're dealing with people that are looking for social acceptance to accept the Bitcoin. And so I think we're moving primarily from like orange pilling people. And this is going to sound a bit rough when I say it, but I think it's the truth of what's going on. But I think that more people are going to come to Bitcoin through the orange suppository method than the orange pill. And I don't like it. I wish people came to it freely. But you know, if you got to get to Bitcoin through going through a morass of pain, like, okay, you got here, but the incentives are there at the end of the day. Just like you said, like the thing that Satoshi did that is truly genius is he figured out how to build a system, a network where every single actor works to the maximum of their self-interest, and the network itself thrives and goes up in both price and security, right? And that means that he harnessed human greed, basically, and that is like leverage against the entire system. So the entire system is not going to withstand harnessing human self-interest. It just won't. I don't think there's anything more powerful as a force on the planet outside of like the laws of physics. So what we're seeing here is kind of an inevitable situation unfold, and all those self-interested people have to fight for it. So a lot of people try to put up this juxtaposition of, hey, Bitcoin, I'm just going to sit back and relax and let it play out and it'll take care of itself. Or the other people are like, hey, I got to jump in here and fight for it. And the truth is, like, the self-interested people will fight for it, and it has to be fought for, and it will win. Like those things can all be true at the same time. So that's how I see where I see Bitcoin now. And, you know, I don't love how I see this playing out. I hope it certainly is shorter than decades, because I want my kids to live in that future you talked about, Nico. But, you know, I'll step off my soapbox now and turn the ranting back to you.
No, I think you brought up a really good point, Kent, which is like, it's so true. A decade ago, it was inconceivable. We could not have predicted Nayib Bukele saying, hey, we're going to make, you know, Bitcoin one of the currencies in the country. We could not have imagined the president of the United States tweeting from the White House X account, we're going to make Bitcoin the capital of the world. We could not have imagined the president of the United States speaking at a Bitcoin conference, freeing Ross Ulbricht. Like, that was inconceivable. Like, that was so hard to predict. So Kent, you just made me incredibly bullish, right? Because if you just take a look at what happened in the last 10 years, like try to track that out for the next 10 years. Like, it's like, can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And where things are heading with like banks basically saying, hey, like we're super bullish on this, we want to custody it. Like, is that trend going to stop, or is it probably going to continue and perhaps actually even accelerate, right? Excuse me. So that's a really good point. Guys, we have so much to cover on today's show. I do want to give a shout out to the Rumble live stream. It's cooking today. Also, of course, the YouTube live stream, as always, the X live stream. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing us on your favorite platform. Give us a like in the audio podcast. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys supporting the show. We're going to be right back just after the break. We have a ton of news and content to cover. Stay tuned.
Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo, and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. All right, everybody, we are back. I do want to read this comment. Where did it come from, Opti? YouTube or Rumble?
The one that I just sent the chat. yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, so it's a YouTube comment, which is Foxy B03 said, a Bitcoin suppository is the true Trojan horse. Love that. Anyways, at the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is holy moly, $65,770. Dude, it dropped like what? Like $300. Have we been going live? Sats per dollar 1,514. Block height 952,243. Decline from all-time high, now currently at 47.6%. That's right. If you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting it at a almost 50% discount. And the amount of the percentage issued of Bitcoin is currently at 95.42%. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, we got all the way up to 10%. Now we're back down to 4.4%.
So over.
If and when, I would say when Bitcoin reaches the market cap of gold, which I would say that's like the minimum. That's the minimum, right? That would put the price of Bitcoin at $1.5 million per coin. Anyhow, I do have a clip of Senator Lummis. We have a little bit of an update regarding the Clarity Act. We did get a ton of momentum really until the Senate Banking Committee, right? Where, you know, Elizabeth Warren started throwing all the punches, but it really seemed like there was this was going to go through the finish line, right? And then basically it started to halt again, right? And then we saw a clip, which we played for you guys on yesterday's episode of, I believe it was Jamie Dimon, who was basically calling the Clarity Act BS, to use his own words. I can't believe he said that on live TV. But
well, I think he said Brian Armstrong is BS.
Yeah, like
and he's going to fight the Clarity Act. That's what the clip was.
Fighting the Clarity Act, and the reason for that is simple, right? He doesn't want exchanges or alternative financial platforms to offer interest, right? And I've explained this to you guys. Currently, if you have an account with a bank, they do offer you interest, but it's like a laughable amount of interest. The banks feel threatened because these alternative platforms are offering like 3%, right? So for the younger generation, they're like, okay, so I have to go into a branch, takes an hour and a half to open a bank account. They're going to charge me a $15 maintenance fee if I don't have $2,500 on hand. And you're paying me pennies on the dollar. I could just leave my money on these alternative platforms and I'm going to get interest in the form of Bitcoin. Like, why would I not do that? Right. And that's what the banks are freaking out about. That's the main thing that's really stopping this thing. It's unfortunate that the Bitcoin part of the bill is kind of lumped into that, right? Because the Bitcoin part of the bill actually protects open source software developers, which is the part that we really care about. It protects the right to self-custody. That's what we really care about. It's unfortunate that this is getting lumped into all of that, but it is what it is. This was Senator Lummis, the Bitcoin senator. I had the honor to interview her in Washington, D.C. This was her response to Jamie Dimon's comments regarding Brian Armstrong. And to give you guys a little bit of context, Brian Armstrong and Coinbase have really been, like, as much as we're Bitcoiners and we're Bitcoin only, Coinbase has really been the one pushing for this bill. Like, Brian Armstrong has really been the figurehead of trying to get this bill across the finish line. So here was Senator Lummis's response to Jamie Dimon.
Really distasteful remarks, especially towards Brian Armstrong of Coinbase. I would say
Jamie said he thought was full of.
Yeah, exactly.
Full of.
So here's what
rhymes with it.
Yeah. Here's where Jamie Dimon is absolutely wrong. He either hasn't read the bill or he wants to mislead people. And let's put the best construction on this. He hasn't read the bill. AML, anti-money laundering provisions that apply to banks, and the Bank Secrecy Act provisions that apply to banks also apply into digital assets. It's in the bill. There's something like 16, 17 references in the bill to the application of those laws.
I guess here.
You know, what she did there, and I experienced something very similar when I spoke to her in DC, and I remember, I never forget the response that she gave to me. But basically, I was making the case that the opposing party really wanted a central bank digital currency. And the way that she answered that was a masterclass in that specific interview. Highly recommend you watching it. And what she did here was something very similar. So the way that she responded was, it was distasteful, right? And everyone reacted like, oh, we can't even say that word on live TV or else, you know, we'll get fined. But the way that she said it was very elegant, because she pointed out the first part, which is what we've been saying this entire time for the reasons, right, regarding the interest and stuff. She says, you know, he could be misleading people, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and he probably actually hasn't read the bill. And then she goes on to make the case on why the bill actually offers those certain protections, right? So it was a masterclass by Senator Lummis, basically calling out Jamie Dimon without calling out Jamie Dimon, right? You guys know where we stand on this. To me, it's very obvious, right? Like, he wants to mislead people, because the argument that he used regarding the interest, it wasn't a good argument at all. It was, we don't want to do that because the protections are not in place. No, you don't want to do that because you don't want to pay your customers 3.5% interest, because that attacks your business model. That's the reality. But again, that's my opinion. I love the way the Bitcoin senator, Senator Lummis, elegantly answered that question. It was a masterstroke, in my opinion. Kent, what's your take on this?
I don't think masterstroke. I don't know. Anyways, pause.
What master? What else? Like
masterclass? I don't know. Whatever, dude. Don't mind me. Don't mind me.
All right, Kent. You guys know what I mean. If you want to take the just
look,
keep going.
here,
Just go on. Masterstroke is an incredibly clever, skillful, and often unexpected action or strategy that produces a major success.
All right, bet.
I don't know where your mind was going, Opti. I don't know where your mind was going, Opti. What the hell? Okay, this is a PG-13 show. All right, Kent, what's your take on this?
First off, chat gets it. All right, go, Kent.
We got this out of the way. We got the spitballing done here, boys. No, the way I see this is the Bitcoin community is going to lose out when she sails off into the sunset, without a doubt. I mean, Senator Lummis has been an incredible advocate on the Hill. She gets Bitcoin. She is Bitcoin. She represents it well. And when she's gone, I don't know who picks up that mantle. Hope somebody does, but it's not looking like we've got anybody with her skill level. I do think, the most clever way to paint your opponent is to do so without being direct. And I think that's just what she did, and what you're calling a masterstroke there, Nico. And she did a great job with it by, referring to that, but then saying, nah, he probably isn't doing that. We're going to take the high road. The way that I look at this bill and the way it's playing out, it's not lost on me that another area of potential here is that the Clarity Act is going to loosen the flow of capital into Bitcoin. So is it coincidental that we see Bitcoin at very low prices again, just before that should pass? It seems like Bessent and the Trump administration, they're putting a lot of political capital behind getting this thing across the finish line. And assuming it does, it should open up the purse strings for a lot of capital allocators to move into Bitcoin. And in fact, that may be the next big narrative, because we're certainly missing one right now. So this seems sort of almost existential to the Trump administration, and getting this through, he's having to go up. The administration and the Republicans, like Senator Lummis, are having to go up against the banking lobby. And I don't think that the banking lobby is used to ever losing. So it will be a momentous, like David versus Goliath sort of moment, assuming this does get across the finish line. But I think it's, who was it that said, software is eating the world? I think it's just taken a long time for software to get to banking, but it was going to inevitably disrupt the banking sector as well in the fullness of time. And I'm glad that Bitcoin's doing that. I mean, I think they've been able to grift off of the Cantillon effect, where you sit closest to the money printer. I mean, Jamie Dimon has been a benefactor of the Cantillon effect more than almost anybody else out there, right? Because he sits so close to the Federal Reserve and the money printer. So good on him that we're ending the grift. And people that are usually in on the grift are the ones that bark the loudest. Like, if you ever want to see anybody that is in on a grift, like, end it. And the people that complain are the ones that make the most noise. And I think that's what we're seeing from Jamie Dimon, is he's been able to take advantage of that for far too long. And I certainly hope the Clarity Act finishes and gets through. I don't think it's necessary for Bitcoin, but changing the dynamic and the relationship between banks and the state and through Bitcoin, that's a win.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, by the way. And I posted this on X, like, when I found out Senator Lummis is not running for re-election, like, I was pretty bummed out, because she's a Bitcoiner through and through. She holds Bitcoin. She understands it like no one else in the Senate. So I think it is going to be, a big loss, unfortunately, for the community, because she's been our main advocate, right, for this. So that's unfortunate. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to be right back just after the break. We're going to be talking about something spicy. You're going to want to stay tuned. The 4-year cycle. What's going on? Is it playing out? Is this Nico's vindication after getting pummeled by Opti and the chat and Walker and all the guests that come on the show, giving me crap for talking about the 4-year cycle?
Shit.
Anyways, we're going to be right back just after the break. Stay tuned. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledden's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with 0 penalties or monthly payments. Ledden's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledden. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like Bitkey and I recommend it to my friends and family. Bitkey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life, not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing, and no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about Bitkey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in, inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new Bitkey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Let me pull this up. All right, here we go. So, where are we, ladies and gentlemen? Where are we? Okay, so fear and greed index. We're in fear, but we're not in extreme fear territory. Last time we were in extreme fear territory was back in February when we had that huge drop from 91,000 to 70,000. And then, of course, we got a little run up again and actually went into the greed category. Now we're back down to the fear category, but we haven't entered extreme fear as of yet. Now, going back to something that I tweeted out yesterday, is everyone still in denial the 4-year cycle isn't dead? And this is something that I've been talking about since October of last year. The only indicator that has not broken, is the 4-year cycle theory. If you follow the 4-year cycle theory, it exactly pointed out that we were going to top in October. If you follow the 4-year cycle theory, it points out that we are going to bottom out in October of this year. Now, the question on everybody's mind is, did the institutions change that, right? And that question is still yet to be answered. And I'm going to continue to echo exactly what I've been saying over the last couple of weeks. If we make it over the summer, the next 3 months are going to be key. And we channel between 80 and 60K. When I first started saying this, we were actually in the high 70s, right? Now we're in 60. Now we're in 65, right? But if we stay between the 80 and 60K region, I have a very strong belief that, hey, listen, that was the bottom. You know, the worst is we're out of the woods, right? If Bitcoin breaks below 60K in the next 3 months, and we have the famous meme, sell in May and then go away, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see lower lows. Now, the opportunity for you guys is that this is when all the tourists get flushed out. They go away. This is when people start doubting themselves. I'm getting messages from Bitcoiners, right? Like literally, like, dude, like, is it over? Like literally, like I'm literally getting messages from Bitcoiners that have been in this for a decade. Guys, you have forgotten this feeling. And if you're new, welcome. You're paying your price of tuition. I can't explain it to you. But this is the type of fear that you always see with every capitulation event and every single bear market that has ever happened through Bitcoin's history. And historically speaking, that happens to be the most opportune moment for you to stack some cheap sats or mine some wild sats. Moving on to this next part, which I thought was interesting. The Ape of Gold Street, that's a good name, So true. So he's replying to, notice how no one is saying Bitcoin is going to 1 million anymore. Guilty as charged when Trump, and this was definitely a top signal, by the way. When Trump was elected, I was literally posting pictures of Trump and I was like, $500,000 Bitcoin, end of 2025. Top signal. Michael Saylor's 100K party, top signal. President Trump launching a meme coin, Trump signal. You know, and if you go back to the fear and greed, it's fascinating because when that was happening, right? This was the beginning. I told you this was the euphoric top. That was actually when the greed index was topping out. We didn't even hit extreme greed when the price of Bitcoin actually reached an all-time high. The extreme greed part actually happened exactly what the moment in time that we're talking about, when Saylor threw his New Year's 100K party and when President Trump was elected. That was extreme fear. And me and Opti were euphoric at the time. I remember on the streams we were having the time of our lives. So it was
we were
like,
only euphoric because the numbers were good on the stream.
No, the numbers were good on the stream, but
the price was mid.
Also it was very exciting times in terms of Bitcoin's history. So going back to this post, and then I want to get Ken's thoughts because I did mention wild sats. Anyways, so true. Where are all these Bitcoin experts now? They started podcasts, launched paywall services, and told everyone Bitcoin was going to $250,000 Bitcoin in 2025, guilty as charged, and $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. Reality is, it looks like it's heading straight to the bottom of the toilet. Fantastic. I love those posts. They happen every single time, right? Now, the point I want to highlight is actually Larry Lepard, he's going to be coming on the show later this month, said, it will still, this is Larry Lepard, it will still achieve $1 million per coin in the early 2030s. Nothing has broken or changed. I wrote a book about this and will be correct. Right now, it looks like gold in 2000 or 2015, but it is silly cheap in gold terms and a much better buy. That is Larry Lepard's own quote. So I want to get Kent's thoughts on this from two angles. Angle number one is, Kent, you've lived through these cycles. You've been in the industry as long as I have, right? It's like people have like gotten amnesia and have just forgotten that like these are the normal ebbs and flows of a Bitcoin bear market, and this is how things happen. But it's just funny how human psychology, it's like it's a monkey brain. It's like we can't turn it off. It's like, oh, this is going to zero, right? Like everyone loses faith in it, and like historically speaking, that happens to be the time when you should have smash bought. Kent, what's your take?
I think you're 100% right there. At the end of the day, I mean, we are animals, right? We are part of the primate kingdom, and as animals, we like to avoid pain. And by God, it hurts when 40% of your purchasing power has vaporized in fiat, right? And we try to avoid that and say, "Oh, get me out from this," and I'm going to sell at the bottom, and it's dead, and it's all over. But I think if you're going to be in Bitcoin for the long term, you have to recognize the emotional states of that 4-year price cycle. Now, I am still on the fence. I was with Opti until recently here. Maybe Opti, you've changed your mind as well. That we are in an elongated style.
Yeah, I was with myself until recently too. So you know, we're no different.
Changed as well. Yeah,
no, I'll add, but you keep going, and then I'll give you my take.
Yeah, so I've been in the camp that we have been in an elongated cycle and that the bottom is in. Ooh. I still think that the bottom is possibly in, but I've backed off that position a little bit. I've backed off the position that it's an elongated cycle, and I'm on the fence with both of those at this point. You know, I think that there could be market manipulation that we didn't expect, like Iran selling, something else related to the Clarity Act going on, market makers dying in October that has changed the market fundamentally. I don't know, but it still seems odd to me, the price action of this last cycle. But I can't deny what you're saying either, Nico, is like, hey, so far, the 4-year price cycle checks out. And any other narratives, like, they're not proven at this point. So let's see what happens here. But at the end of the day, what you've said is I'm paraphrasing, but when it hurts the most is always been the right time to buy. And that's been pretty much unbroken And I will say that the sentiment in Bitcoin right now, it is one of the worst I've ever experienced in 10 years. I think that part of that is the community itself. And I love that you've got shows like this. And I hope that, as Bitcoin is going through this process of digesting Wall Street and we get to the other side of this, I hope that freedom movement that was here in the Bitcoin community is like the dominant culture. It comes back. And I think I've been actually thinking about this, Nico. My sense is that Larry, who wrote The Big Print, which is a wonderful book, great for TradFi folks in your network if you are looking for a good orange pilling book, get that for them. I think that we need another big print moment to bring people together and bring the Freedom Go Up movement back to the fore within Bitcoin, because I think that honestly is the community that drives Bitcoin's adoption forward. I'm not convinced that the TradFi, wrapper exposure to Bitcoin and treasury assets and, leverage your Bitcoin as collateral. It doesn't have the same resonance to it. And so these bear markets, they show who's here for the right reasons, which is the network and the properties and the personal freedom that Bitcoin provides. And the people that stick around when the next bull market is ripping, they get listened to, and they get to be the people that speak for the community in a lot of ways. So that's all to say. Nico, Opti, I know this isn't a fun time. I feel it getting kicked in the gut with the price being down. Know that it's impacting people and their desire to purchase Bitcoin, and mining is the best way to get your Bitcoin, by the way. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but at the end of the day, sticking through it has always been the winning strategy, and Bitcoin will rise from the ashes again, and it's not dead, and the people dancing on the graves will look foolish.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I do want to talk about the mining aspect, and we're going to talk about it right after the break. But I'll give you guys a little bit of a tease. So my first entrepreneurial endeavor in the space was actually a mining business, right? That's where the name BitVault comes from, right? And we ended up closing shop in 2018 because it was extremely painful. Like the price dropped from $17,000 to what was the bottom? It was like 3,500,
yeah,
right?
Something like that.
So it was a huge shock. But what's crazy? If I stuck it out 2018, 2019, 2020, I would have made a fortune. I would probably have a mining company today, right? But again, it was basically my first Bitcoin bear market. I didn't have a lot of capital at the time. I wasn't positioned. I was a lot younger. I didn't have any entrepreneurial experience. I was kind of like learning the ebbs and flows. But looking back, if I would have kept mining, you would have made a lot of money, right? So I think that's like a lesson to take there from the past, is like these moments is what tries you as a Bitcoiner. It's what tries your conviction. And it flushes out the tourists, right? So I do want to talk to Kent after the break, because
wait. Let me. Can I get in here and talk about the 4-year cycle? I'm gonna give you your flowers for once. I'm not gonna be mean for once to Nico here.
While you talk, I'm gonna pull up this chart.
What is this chart?
When I tweeted, "Is everyone still in denial the 4-year cycle is dead?" Perfectly intact, and it literally has every other cycle, and the tops and.
Okay, all right, okay, and dude, gloating's not a good look. Okay,
I'm not gloating.
I'm just trolling. I'm just trolling. Okay, look, guys, I gave Nico a lot of flack. Okay, and I came on the show and I even said, okay, you know what? 4 months later, maybe 6 months later, I'm like, okay, Nico was right. All right, that was the top. Okay, I admit when I'm wrong. Everyone knows I am stupidly bullish always. That's my bias. I'm like, no, dude, 126K or whatever it was, like that can't be the top. We're going higher. And then 1010 happened, and it was like, oh yeah, like something fundamentally broke in the market. Like, thank you, Binance. We're going a lot lower now. I think that the only thing I'm hanging on here, because I can't deal with any more Nico's I told you so. So this is the one thing we're going to hold on to is, guys, we just got to make sure we don't go to 30 or 40K, because I cannot deal with Nico gloating on that. So
That's where he's wrong. We're not going to 30 to hold on. I am also with Kent. I'm kind of the opinion that I think 60K was the bottom. Now
60.
That's what I said. 60. I think I said 60, but whatever. Yeah, 60K. And the only thing I'm really like, again, just holding on to because I can't deal with any more Nikas. I told you so. Is we are seeing higher lows. So right now in the current price action, I'm to be honest, I'm not feeling that good about it. I'm like, dude, we might break down under 60K here. So as of now, like, yeah, okay, 4-year cycle, it's still intact, but hey, we're not going 80% lower. It's the only thing I can hold on to,
dude. Like, first of all, when you first started your bit,
okay, let's not talk about my L's here.
No. I'm not talking about your L's. I was not going to gloat, and I was not talking about your L's. When you first started your bit, before you like added the second part, which is like, oh, you know, there's second lows. I was about to say, guys, we literally just hit bottom.
Oh no, now we're going lower.
Like
now we're going lower.
Like
now it's going lower.
Opti changing his mind. I was like, oh god.
Now, now we're going lower.
I think we just hit bottom. And then
we're
you're like,
lower.
and then you caveated that with like, oh, but there's near. I was like, oh damn. Okay.
Well, dude, like you're looking at the price action today. You know, in the last it's been the last week, like it's just been nothing but red. We've seen some pretty big red candles, and we are getting to that like make or break it point where like I know Nico and I have been behind the scenes kind of talking about. Nico's like, I told you guys, you know, he's telling me and Luke, like I told you 4-year cycle's intact, like 60K may or may not be the bottom, and now we're like close to that, and I'm like, dude, if we don't hold up here, like just pack it in, boys. Q4, we'll be back. But
all right, everybody, we're going to be right back just after the break. There's different ways to acquire Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen, and one of them is mining. And of course, we got the CEO and co-founder of SAZ Mining in the house. And the way that I see SAZ, it's like the Uber of Bitcoin mining, man. They make it incredibly effing easy to mine Bitcoin. And in an aligned incentive structure way, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. We're going to be right back, everybody. Stay tuned. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high-performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at Hive Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, SAT123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay solid. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
All right, everybody, we are back, and we are with mining expert Kent Haliburton, CEO and co-founder of SAZmining.com. Again, SAZmining.com is Bitcoin mining as a service. Before because I want to cover two topics here, Kent, which is the opportunity, because I'm sticking to that. I learned my lesson in 2018, the opportunity of mining Bitcoin in a bear market. But before I get to that, what is SAZ mining, Ken?
SAZ mining is a managed mining service. You know, we coined that term mining as a service because when we came to market, nobody had built out a platform to make mining accessible to the masses. So we did that, you know, in the vein of an Airbnb. And we are a property management service. if you will. We manage rigs on behalf of our clients. So we are the only ones that built out a platform and then attached data centers to it and staked our claim on being able to create value for our clients. What I mean by that is we only get paid if we're producing Bitcoin for our client. And so clients show up, they purchase the hardware, they pay for the electricity, but we don't profit from selling either of those. We only make money when our clients produce Bitcoin, and we get 15% of the rewards paid out by the mining pool. So we're non-custodial. And right now, our clients are able to come in and dollar cost average through an energy bill at $46,000 for their Bitcoin. So, even assuming that the worst case scenario happens and your 40K comes into play, you're pretty much a break even. And the way that you are able to acquire these sats is directly from the network, right? You're not going through any part of the banking surveillance system. You're not going through an exchange. And as a result, those sats flow straight to your wallet. It's one of the things, those wild sats, that drives a lot of our customer base to come and participate in mining. So I think of it as just better Bitcoin. It is the way that Satoshi designed the network. He did not design the network to go to an exchange and buy your Bitcoin. And there's a reason why the timeline split, and many people after 2013 started to buy instead of mine. But the first few years of Bitcoin, it was all about mining your Bitcoin if you were going to get them. And I'd like to think that we are one of the few companies that is helping to create a renaissance in how people get their Bitcoin. I want to challenge the exchanges as the primary way. I mean, they are taking a cut of the fiat to Bitcoin exchange. We're not. We're taking a property management fee for providing this service. I think it's a wholly different experience for our clients to acquire their Bitcoin this way. It's lower costs on a dollar cost average basis, meaning you get more sats for your dollar. It's sovereign. It's your Bitcoin gone directly to your wallet. And at the end of the day, you're supporting a Bitcoin-driven company that is making money by providing a direct value and operational service. So there's a tie to physical reality with what we're doing, like an Airbnb type of product. So anyhow, I'm proud of what we've built. I'm stoked that we're starting to scale up. I'm glad that we have data centers across 3 continents right now and continuing to scale aggressively. And I think that we are a overlooked type of business model in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And the more people that experience us, we've got great Trustpilot reviews, the better, the more our star is rising. And I'd like to think we can continue to do that and challenge the exchanges.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And the part that I want you guys to focus on specifically, because this is a differentiator between other, again, it's Bitcoin mining as a service. It's very unique, ladies and gentlemen, because other companies, right? What they do is they collect a check no matter what, right? So essentially what happens is, like, you get into an agreement, and regardless of whether the machine is up or it's broken or, it's actively hashing, they're still getting paid either way. And what happens with that, and as a Bitcoiner, I strongly believe in this, like, incentives drive human beings. Like American HODL's quote, "No one is better than their incentives." Ultimately, the reason we love SAZ here at Simply Bitcoin is, if those machines are offline, if your machines that you bought through SAZ are offline, SAZ mining isn't making money. So what is the incentive of SAZ mining? The incentive of SAZ mining is to get those effing machines up as humanly possible, because they're not making money off of those machines either, right? So, like, ultimately, the aligned incentive structure model is beautiful because, again, it incentivizes SAZ to keep those miners up and running. And it's obviously rewarding for you because you're getting rewards, from those miners that you bought through SAZ that you have with SAZ. So it's like, it's aligned incentives, right? If the company wins, you win, right? It's like, it's beautiful. It's synergistic. And that's the way that you should be building a business, because ultimately you want your customers to win and the business wins as well. So it's a beautiful structure, Kent, that I think really is a differentiator, and it's very unique to what you guys do. And then, not to mention this fantastic website that you guys built that makes it incredibly easy for people that don't have experience mining to start mining in a very, very short amount of time, right? You send the money and the miner is essentially up and running within 24 to 48 hours. Like, that is absolutely beautiful, right? And it says it here right on the website. No markups, no hidden fees, just mining. And you're very transparent, right? 15% of the mining reward goes to SAZ, and then 85% goes to the user. So I love that, Kent. Like, it's the part of your business that I love the most. And I think it's the part that I bring up every single time you come on the show. It's just so incredibly important to bring up, ladies and gentlemen, because ultimately, if your machines are not hashing with SAZ, SAZ is not making money off of it either. Kent, is that correct?
That is correct. At some point in the not so distant future, we will have audited financials to have an independent third party sharing of that. But we look at it on a monthly basis to ensure that, no, we are not making money selling hardware or electricity. And we don't make any money on that. We only make money on the Bitcoin that is produced as a result of giving our clients good uptime and managing their mining rigs. And it's a low time preference approach. It really is. I mean, it's been very, very difficult to build the business model this way. It would have been much easier to do like many of the traditional hosting companies out there, which is mark up your hardware and take a good cut of selling the hardware and then use that to propel growth. But doing that means that you're not necessarily compelled to get that hardware plugged in. And that has happened in our industry. And, you know, if you're making a good chunk of your margin also on marking up the electricity, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to give maintain the mining machines, right? So there's a variety of outcomes that happens, but you know, if you structurally set yourself up so that you're only making via revenue share, so we're only making money if our clients get Bitcoin, then we have to perform. By definition, we perform or die. And we've been performing, and you can see it with the Trustpilot reviews. And as a result, because we have aligned interests with our customers, we very much listen. We've pushed through a lot of improvements to our user interface so that the pool switching, you know, is much more seamless. Like, we offer 2 mining pools, Luxor and Ocean was by client demand. We've also pushed through recently the ability for our clients to signal for BIP 110. We had a very vocal number of our clients that wanted to be able to signal for that. While we didn't want to take a position on that at this point, we wanted to allow our clients to be able to signal for BIP 110. And there's more features that are coming down the pike that are being client driven. So, you know, we're listening. We have monthly town halls that are available only to our clients. And it's very much a pleb driven movement that we've created here. And, you know, by the end of the year, we'll have about 1,000 clients on board with our platform. Oh, and just because somebody asked, yes, of course, you get to write this off. This is, if you're a US citizen, we've got US data centers, one right now in Texas that we're filling. So if you want to take advantage of 100% bonus depreciation, which is a big driver for a lot of our US based clients right now, please do. And if you're in another country like Australia that's set to implement capital controls here fairly soon in a pretty heinous way, and you want to get wild sats directly from mining, hit us up. You know, we are seeing people show up from all over to take advantage of the wild sat component and wanting to take advantage of bonus depreciation in the US. So it's a cool time to be part of mining. Now, I will say I've seen this over and over again, having been in it long enough, but the time that people are most interested in mining is when the numbers look the best, and the numbers look the best in the bull market. However, the bull comes after the bull market is the bear market, and then the numbers don't look so good, and then clients get unhappy because they've kind of bought the top in mining as well. But when the numbers look the worst, which is now because we're in a bear market, is actually been historically the right time to deploy capital and get involved. So we've seen a lot of like smart money miners actually coming in and buying decent sized positions right now. So if you've thought about a Bitcoin position being built through mining, it's actually the right time to do it from a historical precedent. And as long as you have the mindset of, hey, I'm cycling dollars through my hardware and electricity into a Bitcoin position that I'm going to hold, then you're going to have a great outcome over a 4-year time frame. If you come in, though, with the mindset of, cool, I want to cycle dollars into Bitcoin and I want to sell at the top and make more dollars, you're probably not going to have a great experience. This is really how you acquire Bitcoin. This isn't how you acquire more dollars.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I big fan of SAZ. See someone in the chat working. I get some SAZ mining swag. Kent gave me one. I just got one as well. And Kent's wearing the SAZ mining hat, which is very, very clean. And some people were asking some questions, and I didn't want to address them. Where is it? Where can I find it? What's the average price of a miner / mining device?
Oh, so simple numbers right now. First of all, this is probably not very well known, but the difficulty is down from October, right? So that means that you are getting October of last year. Since then, that was the all-time high for difficulty, which means that you're getting more sats for your dollar. Have been since that time period. So anybody that started mining since then is getting more sats than the people that started before that. So there's great opportunity right now. As far as kind of typical investment, between $5,000 to $6,000 is the typical mining rig to get started. You're generating after our management fee about 350,000 sats, and that costs about $160 per month to run that machine. We can get you up and going within 24 to 48 hours, especially at our Texas site. Takes a little bit longer in Paraguay, but we're trying to get enough inventory on hand to keep that short all the time. And within a week or two, I think we're going to be there. We'll have constant inventory. One of the nice things about the bear market is because we are one of the people surviving and thriving through it, is a lot of people are coming to us and trying to figure out how they can help us out. So, we pass that on to our clients, and I think we're going to have more inventory on hand to make time shorter and almost instantaneous before too much longer.
I love that. I love that. Second question, and you already addressed this, but let's clarify it, right? Don't they just make money off the customer paying for the mining? No, this is the beauty of it, ladies and gentlemen, right? So, Ken, if you want to clarify that.
Yeah, that's it. We've talked about this a little bit already, but yeah, if you look at our hardware plus electricity, the cost that or what we charge our customers, the costs that we bear. So I'm talking like look at a financial statement; those are directly offset, and the only thing that's left is the management fee that drops through to fund actually the entire business. So we design the business that way to ensure that we are aligned with our customers. That is the approach that we take.
So 2 more questions for you, Kent. Is this KYC free Bitcoin mining? Well, we explained that to you, ladies and gentlemen. You mine the Bitcoin and goes straight to your Bitcoin wallet, right? You mine the Bitcoin and you get wild sats in return, right? Now I got another question, Kent, regarding the pricing. So someone Feather15 from X says, why does it seem like your miners are more expensive than competitors just by claiming no markup?
Oh, that's a really good question. I like that. So Feather, the reason why is because depending on the site dynamics, we have costs that we build in to the mining rig. So when you see a mining rig, you can go out there and you can go to the hardware market and probably buy a cheaper mining rig than we're able to provide. There's other costs that come along with the sites that we have to bake into the rig price. So what I can tell you absolutely, and I can't show you this until next year when we plan to have our first audit done. We've got our first reviewed financials done, but when we have the first audit done, I'll be able to transparently show that, like, look, we're not making any money in the hardware. So other competitors, they may not have those same costs that they have to bake into the price of the hardware. But I do know that by simplifying it, by baking those in, it makes it more appetizing. We used to break all those numbers out, and it just led to a lot of deep conversations that didn't actually yield any helpful results for our customers. So we just bake those in, but we do not have any money that we're making on selling them.
I love that. And I love the fact that, you're taking the extra initiative, Kent, where you're doing a kind of proof of reserve type of situation where it's like, listen, like, don't trust me, bro. This is a third-party audit firm that's literally proving that, hey, we're not making money on the markup. We're not making money on the energy. We're making the money through the revenue share, which again goes back to my initial point. The aligned incentive structure is so important because SAZ doesn't make money unless those miners are up, right? So again, if you win, they're winning. If you're not winning, they're not winning, right? And that's absolutely beautiful. And well, then we got to go ahead.
Let me just add something here real quick, Nico, because I think this is an important distinction. I've come, like, we're pioneering a business model. Nobody else is doing what we're doing. And so, like, I'm having to, in my head, think through, like, what are we out in the marketplace? And if you look at, like, the Bitcoin network, kind of the top of that, of the mining stack where the Bitcoin gets produced from, I would argue is companies like SAZ Mining with the mining as a service model. The bottom of the fiat stack is the exchange where you trade your dollars for Bitcoin. And that's why the competition is head to head right there. And that's kind of a unique position to be in the industry because we're getting access to money the way that Satoshi designed the network versus you having gone and earned it through your proof of work out in the marketplace by creating value for others and then trading it or Bitcoin. So it's a fundamentally different approach, but at the end of the day, we think it's superior.
Absolutely. I completely agree to that as well, because again, I'm an aligned incentive structure maxi to say the least. I think I coined it when me and Kent coming on the show. I was like, yeah, aligned incentives. Anyways, so are you hiring in Texas? I think go to the SAZ Mining website. I'm sure there's an email that you guys could reach out to that. And then last question here, Kent. Loves how many questions today. I love this. From, dude, I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. But this person on YouTube said, how much are you making per month on average with this device?
Ooh, let's do some quick math. So if I'm making 350,000 sats right now, and that's 0.85, and I multiply it by, so I'm getting about $40, $50 at the max from each mining rig I get plugged in per month. Not a lot of money. The only way my business works is to scale it.
But this is my experience from 2018. It's $40 to $50 in Bitcoin. That's 50% from the top. This is the important caveat, ladies and gentlemen. This is the lesson I literally burned my finger on. I would be a Bitcoin miner today. I wouldn't be in media if I stuck it out, right? That's the important caveat, is that you're getting $40, $50 worth of Bitcoin per month. When Bitcoin reaches all-time highs again, if you look back historically, you weren't making $40 to $50 of US dollars. You were making $100, right? And that's the tricky part for you guys to understand. And Kent buried the lead earlier. Because the difficulty is lower, you're actually getting more Satoshis right now. And you guys should do a mental shift in your mind. You should not denominate your net worth in US dollars. You should denominate your net worth in Bitcoin. And ultimately what Kent is saying is you're getting more Satoshis right now from mining than you were back in October when the difficulty was at all-time highs. And you're getting $40 to $50 worth of Bitcoin. That's the important caveat. So if you hold that, if Bitcoin blasts through all-time highs, you're getting a lot more than $40 to $50 a month, right? So that's the important distinction that everyone has to digest. And again, I learned this lesson the hard way. Get into mining when you're in a bear market year. You do not want to get into mining when you're in a bull market year. I mean, you could. It's not that it's a bad thing, right? I have a dollar cost average philosophy where, like, I'm, again, acquiring Bitcoin no matter the price, right? That's been my philosophy since I've got into the space. But from an opportunity perspective, yeah, that was just my lesson, Ken. I don't know how you feel about that, because I heard the $40, $50. I'm like, okay, but you know, if we make back all-time highs, that's not $40-50. That's a lot more.
No, that's what's kept me grinding through this business model is that exact fact, Nico, is it's not been easy, right? Like my business, because I'm only getting like a small amount of money from every mining rig, like I really have to scale this business before the business itself is generating a lot of cash. And there's been a lot of hard times in the business as a result of that, like low time preference approach to only making money by producing Bitcoin for our clients. So it's been a grind for sure, but it's the fact that once we do hit like escape velocity as a business and really have enough hardware plugged in, that we can start to sit on that Bitcoin and take advantage of that exact dynamic where, cool, right now we're in a bear market, we're going to sit on the Bitcoin that we are getting as a management fee, and then we can ride it into the bull market. So the exact same dynamic that motivates people to mine completely motivates us to build this business into a great like blue chip institution.
Absolutely. 100% agree. All right, everybody, go check out sazmining.com. Kent's going to be in the studio, ladies and gentlemen, later this month, which we're looking forward to. But anyways, go to sazmining.com, Bitcoin mining as a service. Start mining those sweet, sweet wild sats today. Guys, I do want to give a shout out again to our conference sponsor. Guys, go check out Mining Disrupt. It's going to be in Miami. I'm sure Kent's going to be there July 21st through the 23rd. You don't want to miss it. This is the largest Bitcoin mining conference in the world. And thank God I don't have to get on a flight. It's in Miami, baby. July 21st through the 23rd. If you're trying to get a job in the industry, if you're trying to find out more about SAZ, you want to meet Kent in person, you got to go to Mining Disrupt. Use promo code simplybitcoin to get 20% off your tickets. Guys, we will see you at Mining Disrupt 2026, July 21st through the 23rd. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.